good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome. Guess what? It is Tuesday, so this is the day for Growth Groove with Dr. Erica. So I am so excited to be here, and you know what? Apparently my hot water kettle is on one, so I'm going to do something that my coach would hate and turn it off. I'm back. So let me tell you a little story about what's going on tonight. So this is my usual time. You know, I'm always here unless something happens and I can't be here. But tonight, the topic is 3 lessons about living your purpose from Growth Groove, from Lovecraft Country, episode 7, also known as I Am. And you know, I don't typically do show episodes. That's not usually my jam. But this one really resonated with what I do and what I talk about. And the little story behind it is I was on the phone, and you're going to see him in a moment, with Coach B Moore. I was on the phone with him, and he's like, so what you doing this week? And I told him, and he's like, hey, we're going to talk about that on my podcast. How about we hop on? I was like, cool. This all happened less than 20 minutes ago. So I have special guests. So thank you so much for being open for the fact that I have special guests at the last minute, and that means it's going to be super phenomenal, because you know the best things happen when they are not planned. And I'm sitting here in the kitchen because you know what? We're going to be spilling tea, talking about all kinds of good stuff. And I don't know about you, some of my best conversations in my life have happened in a kitchen. Not necessarily this kitchen, but a kitchen. So real quick, if you don't know me, I am Dr. Erica, Harvard-trained, double board certified psychiatrist and integrative lifestyle coach. I am on a mission to help women feel seen, valued, and whole on their own terms. But I'm here, it doesn't matter what your gender is. I'm here to help you get through all of this craziness with your sanity intact. I have a book. What do I also have? It's one of them days. I have a telepsychiatry practice. I'm going to talk to you about that later. But let's go ahead and get into it. So a couple of housekeeping tips. The first one is, please tag anyone you think that would enjoy this or needs this message. You can also share. Sharing is caring. The last thing, if you're watching it later, don't even worry about it. Just put hashtag replay in the comments so I know you are here. Please feel free to comment and share away. I can't wait to have you. So since I told you a little bit about what's going on here and the special surprise, I want to bring up my guests. So we are about to bring them up. There is one, and guess what? It's not just one special guest. I got 2, and I lost him, and I got him back. So today, this is like I know Coach B. I haven't had a chance to really meet Mo, but I assume since you're cool with Coach B, you're in the same mental framework, which means this is a night of a crossover. Don't you love a good crossover?
It's now, like those Mark Hamill and Patrick Stewart commercials.
Yes, right. It's like DC is good for them, even though, you know, Marvel's better. But, you know, they're good on their TV shows having a million crossover events. So this is a crossover because I have people from the Black Futurist podcast kicking it with me.
And vice versa. Right. Vice versa. The Black Futurist podcast kicking it.
So I was just on a call with Dr. Erica, and she tells me, hey, you know, so tonight, as I know she does these live streams with incredible consistency. I said, so what are you talking about tonight? She says, I'm talking about 3 takeaways that you would get, that we can give from Lovecraft Country. And I was like, wait, what? 3 takeaways from Lovecraft? It's like, what 3 could you possibly, because there's so much juice. She's like, well, I'm just doing the last episode. I was like, well, tell everybody you're just doing the last episode, because that one itself is a standalone that's incredible, but each episode has several takeaways. So you want to allow yourself the ability to come back and revisit those if you ever feel like coming back this way. So I'm interested to hear your takeaways and add where I can.
So since I have both of you and my audience doesn't know you all well, can y'all tell the people a little bit about yourselves?
Dr. Dolberry, please.
Okay, a little bit about me. I am a guy who's from Ypsilanti, Michigan, and everything that means growing up 313. So, you know, like that, the Detroit lifestyle.
Oh, that's cool. I'm 314. I grew up 314.
Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. And I am an educator. Been an educator for a long time. Wrestling coach. Been coaching for a long time. hip hop head, been that ever since it started. I used to be a b-boy back in the day. And I like to get on podcasts and talk junk.
He so undersells it. But you both do, so that's fine. Dr. Maurice Dolberry.
Man, listen, I'm not gonna put doctor near my stuff because you got a real doctor on here.
Yeah,
So
she's a medical doctor. You're a PhD doctor, but both of you have gone so far in your expertise.
Yeah, but that means that if there's a problem, I can write a paper about it. You can actually fix it. So that's why I'll never tell nobody. I never introduce myself. Hi, I'm doctor. I always say this. The only people who I insist call me doctor are it's not the Black Futurist. So I will edit myself. The only people who I insist call me doctor are college freshmen and jerks.
Okay.
Well,
and also you've been coach of the year multiple times in your wrestling coaching. So let's do that.
Oh.
I have.
Now, in terms of, me talking about myself, I'm going to talk about myself in relation to you two because you two are the stars. I'm just happy to be here. Right. So I have, in relation to you guys,
violin and frame.
What? No, I'm happy. I'm happy with my role. It's great. I've helped Dr. Dolberry change his body so many times because he's also a cosplayer. And if you need to go out and look like Luke Cage, you can't just walk out and do Luke Cage.
Of him on the group chat.
Correct. Yes. And if you're going to go out and be Mace Windu or the Incredible Hulk, you can't just do that. You have to get guidance and expertise and be consistent and reinforcement. And he's done that. And I was along the way. Dr. Erica has lost 50 pounds at one time, completely changing her behaviors and lifestyle in time to go to a trip for Jamaica and really just became, the poster child for my brand, Eating for Abs. So I was happy to be along for that too. So that's who I am in relation to you.
Now that we gotta hype this up. So be like, yeah, I'm a connector between you two. B connects literally hundreds of thousands of folks, professional Black folks, unprofessional Black folks who don't want to be professional and everything else. So B is a person who would get, to a PhD and an MD on a program to talk about Lovecraft Country, right? And to connect us together, right? Because we could be doing those two things separately, but if it wasn't for B, we wouldn't be here. In this situation, B is B put stuff together. Does anybody else? If anybody is the plug, because and what he said is important. Like if you're a coach, because I've been a coach for 20 going on 22 years. When you're a coach, it's hard to coach. It's hard to be coached, and you got to be very particular about who it can be. And oftentimes, it can't be your bro, but with him, it can be. So we can do that. Phenomenal coach. Talented connector. He's a plug. Don't run off on him once or twice.
and he's like the Black male Madonna because he reinvents himself every few years. Like he does total reinventions of himself.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're here to talk about your 3 takeaways from Lovecraft Country, Dr. Erica. I'm a huge fan of this show. I am steeped in the research on this show
all the way in,
and I'm really excited to hear what you saw in episode 7 because I know there's really powerful stuff in there and how you're going to leverage that to help your audience move forward.
Well, one of the things I'd like to say is number 1 that there will be spoilers, and I put that in the description. Originally, there weren't going to be a lot of spoilers, but when we decided to make it a Lovecraft Country party, we're going to have spoilers. So one of the things I'd like to say is I originally, long story short, me and HBO Max had a little relationship issue called I had AT&T for my cell phone and it took forever them to get my HBO Max together. So I was actually late to the Lovecraft Country party. So I binge watched it to get to the point of right before the episode from the week before. That I cannot pronounce that place in Korea. I can't pronounce it. But one of the things that I think that's beautiful about this show is that, number 1, it's steeped in all of this history. So it's one of those ways that it's a great way to get history and information without feeling like you went to school. But the next thing is that there are so many lessons and things in it. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to talk about it this week. Because I don't usually, every once in a while I have a moment with a TV show. I'm binge watching it. That's me and COVID me binge watch. Is that this particular episode spoke to my soul and also to the book I published, because it takes a character. If you haven't seen it, we'll try not to spoil it, but we probably will spoil it a little bit, but that doesn't mean it's still not worth watching. Is that there is a character named Hippolyta, and she is kind of like I talk about it in my book. She's that woman that she does what you're told to do. She's extremely smart. She gets married. She has a family. She takes care of her family. She puts her dreams to the side so she can handle all of her womanly duties. And through the course of this show, in this particular episode, you're faced with her rediscovering who she is outside of the context of what everyone told her she is. Because it's the context where for a lot of women, you're told from a little girl what you're going to be or what you're going to do. And it has
what were some of those things for you, Erica?
As far as which thing?
What were some of the things that you were told you were going to be when you were growing up?
Well, we already know my mother made me like the Black female Manchurian candidate. So my mother had already planned for me to go to Spelman, Harvard, and to be a doctor.
You just fulfilled all of it. So
and she
great job, Mom.
Did it in a way that she tried to make it seem like it was my idea when that was all her idea. But naturally, I was told that you work hard, you're a good girl, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, then you're going to be this great wife, and you're kind of taught like this endpoint is. You do all these things. They want you to go to school, get this education, but the end point is at some point you're going to get married, have kids, have a family, and be a great mom and a great wife. And I think for a lot of women, there are two sides of this that you see. One side is right now you see a lot of single women, and you see all these women that are very professional and accomplished that did all these things. They checked all the boxes, but there was no husband. There were no kids. There may not have even been a good man that was their boyfriend for a while at the end of the rainbow. The other end, you see people that end up like Hippolyta that follow that path. They get married, and somewhere in the middle of that, they just get lost. And a lot of the women I talk to, a lot of their personal narrative is somewhere along the way, especially with handling all of the pressures and responsibility it takes to be a wife and a mother, that who they are as a person gets lost to the point where their main identities only are being a wife and a mother.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I had breakfast one day. I was on travel, and I was went downstairs to I was staying in a hotel. I went downstairs to the hotel little eating area. And I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a bit of an extrovert. So I was sitting there, and these two older white guys were having breakfast at the table next to me. Somehow or other, we ended up talking. And they were both there for their son's lacrosse match, which was at the college across the street. And if I could remember what college it was, I'd know what city I was in, but I don't remember. But we had a talk because the guy was saying the way that he speaks to his son was very much kind of like how you describe your mom. He said, when I'm correcting my son, or I'm giving him some incentive to do something or some correction on something he does, I always reference it back to, I know you'll get this, and when you do, it's going to be helpful to you because you're going to be a great dad. So he's planting these seeds in his son's consciousness that I think are very positive, but I guess also could possibly be very negative if he doesn't end up fulfilling those visions. So I took it as a very positive engagement, and I actually started mirroring some of that behavior with my kids. But I just thought it was a very deliberate, very pointed thing that he did, and he would do often, would say that, in his mind, he's trying to grow a son who could take his place and be a great dad. Yeah. I just don't know if that later, if the kid doesn't meet the right partner, if that becomes, or if he finds out he's got a different sexual orientation, does that become something that he's going to have to unpack with a psychiatrist one day? I don't know.
Well, that's a good question. And I think part of the issue that it ends up so problematic with women is there aren't people that do that as much with men. So there's also, and I don't know Dr. Mo's marital status. I know yours. Is that, are you?
I'm in a partnership. I'm not married, but I have a girlfriend.
Okay. So what ends up happening is you see as women get older, if you're not married when you're younger, is that a lot of the men aren't necessarily looking for marriage. There are some that are, but there are a lot of men that they're living their best life. They are kicking it. They are hanging out. They're enjoying.
They're not going back and forth with you people.
Yeah. And they are enjoying the buffet, all of the buffet. And I think that's where part of the disconnect is that you'll have quality men that weren't necessarily programmed that you're looking to be in this monogamous, long-term, equally yoked relationship. But then all these women are taught this is what you're looking for.
Right.
So it may not have necessarily been a bad thing for the guy.
Yeah. So I think you touched on the shrinking that Hippolyta is talking about in episode 7. And I'd like to start here just by putting this on the table. The idea that this woman's name is Hippolyta and has a daughter named Deanna is an indication of the shrinking itself. Right? Because you would see the clear reference to, if you weren't aware of it, you would see the clear reference to Hippolyta, right? The queen of the Amazon, whose daughter is Deanna, aka Wonder Woman. So if you're going around and everybody knows you as Hippolyta, and you are really Hippolyta, you've already been shrunken, right? It's not a racist thing, but there's the racism of reduced or diminished expectations. Her expectations in her name are already diminished. Who are you going to be, right?
Well, these are going to be out of order.
Oh, you know what? I need to shut up and let you leave.
It's okay. I can be spontaneous.
I'm going to go.
You can be spontaneous. So in this context, the short version, without being all the spoilers, is that she finds herself. We will probably talk about more spoilers because I feel like there's something percolating in Mo's brain.
There's always a lot.
But one of the first things I noticed from it is there's this theme that you have to embrace self-awareness. Because one of the things is it's hard to know who you are or what your purpose is if you have no self-awareness to be able to actually look at yourself. What do you think, Mo?
I think that stands out, right? The fact that you have to be self-aware. And with Hippolyta and a few of these episodes, even without spoilers, these episodes, these 5, 6, and 7, I believe, are the latest. They all have a bit of a hero's journey, and always a part of a hero's journey is that self-discovery and knowing who you are. That's always a part of most compelling, right? That's usually a part of most compelling stories that involve or center around a person,
right,
and how they're going to move through life. So yeah, for sure, watching conceptions of self-awareness with Ruby, with Hippolyta, with Atticus, as well. Yeah, for that embedded.
Montrose, who discovers himself in the previous
absolutely
episode, who had to become self-aware. I mean, he was in the darkness and brought his lifestyle into the light. Right.
There's an emphasis in this show on self-awareness being about being your true self, or who your true self is, learning who your true self actually is.
Yep.
Right. And what Mo was saying is interesting because the other movie, I'm going to switch in and out, that it's a huge thing in Black Panther. Because like when Angela Bassett's character yells, "Show them who you are."
That's a moment. That's a moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to know who you are. First of all, you have to have been told who you are until you started to believe it. And then you have to be reminded who you are in order to show that person, because in this moment, you're not currently showing that person who you are. Let me remind you who you are and tell you to do it. So
Yeah.
how does this translate to everyday life, to the person listening to the stream right now who listens to Dr. Erica Brand all the time? They're hearing you say, embrace self-awareness. Where does the rubber meet the road? What does that look like in real life?
The rubber meets the road in a way that the reason I chose embrace other than just have is that you're going to be able to find your purpose much better if you're really, there's something about embracing that means openness. If you're truly open to actually seeing yourself, and a lot of the journey in life, it's a lot of the busyness of life or figuring out how to do what you're told to do. So being self-aware and embracing self-awareness, to me, the rubber meets the road, and having that openness to not only be open to being self-aware, but embrace the actual action of doing it. Because that leads into what number 2 was, face your fear. One of my favorite quotes, and I can never remember, disclaimer, I can never remember that whole Marianne Williamson quote, but it's the quote that she has. It's from A Return to Love, but they talk about it in Aquila and the Bee. It's our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond belief, yada, yada, yada. Lots of good stuff. And that to really live in your purpose and to embrace your purpose and who you really are is that you have to be able to face your fear, because a lot of times the path of least resistance is just kind of going with the flow. And there are times going with the flow isn't actually being your authentic self.
Right. That's a part of the hero's journey too, facing your fear. There's always that you're going to have to face down your ultimate Black Panther, right? Here's your ultimate battle. And to your point, B, it's important that it happens during this crisis, because now not only is self-awareness key to who you are, but self-awareness is going to get you through this, in this case, mortal crisis.
Yeah.
It's the key to it. It goes from being something hidden within yourself to being your most important weapon.
Yeah. Yep. Where are we drawing the parallel in this particular Hippolyta story where we note that she faces her fear?
Well, there are numerous places where I feel like she really faces her own fear. I mean, the first thing is just embarking on the journey itself, because it would have been a lot more comfortable to stay home and stay where it's safe. And when she gets to the mansion that's burned down, but she keeps going further and further and further into this journey. And then when she starts transitioning into the multiverse, is that she, even though it might not be comfortable when she arrives wherever she arrives, she still steps into it to identify and learn who she can be in that environment. Whereas there were opportunities that they don't show what happened if she would have just said, nah, dog, this is too much.
Yeah, she would have been lieutenant junior grade of what was it, stellar cartography instead of captain of the Enterprise, right?
Yes.
That you have to face this. I've totally jumped shows. Now we're in Star Trek. Sorry, this is how organic conversations happen. If Jean-Luc Picard had not been stabbed through the heart in that bar fight, he would have never become captain of the Enterprise. He would have been lieutenant junior grade with a blue shirt on, begging for attention and trying to get a employee review from Commander Riker as to why he's not command material. So
Commander Riker, who barely knows who he is.
Yeah, he doesn't even know who this guy is.
Instead of being his hero in the alternate universe, right? The man he would follow literally to death. He's just some dude.
Right.
Who works
He's just some dude. He's just a bald head dude who's still a lieutenant. He's older than everybody. He's down he lives in the lab. So in this particular episode of Star Trek, Picard had the choice, because Q gave him the choice. You could either live your normal life and get stabbed through the heart, or you can avoid that pain, that discomfort, all those challenges that came with that, and just will change your life. So he decides to avoid it, and he ends up being less than middle of the road, right? Yep. So facing your fear is the deal, right?
Yeah, he takes
on.
He ended up taking on, and so one of the things that Riker says to him is, your career is really nondescript. You haven't taken any risks. And so the conception there is facing your fear as an example. Now, this is where the education part for me comes in, I think, as a teacher of positive risk taking. right? And so the idea that there are these challenges and these things that are to be feared that are, in the end, no matter what happens, you're going to come out better. So not necessarily a fight, for your life against Killmonger, but do you take this risk? Are you a person who, instead of being risk averse, is risk discerning and is able to say, you know what, this is a positive risk. I might go over and talk to these two old men at a table. I don't know what's going to happen. The worst is they just kind of blow me off. I'm not going to lose anything, but I just might end up in this really interesting. I might learn something about fatherhood from these people. So positive risk taking, right? And continuously challenging your fears is something that that's key into your original point, Dr. Eric, is to avoid the bonus piece that you had. And I hate to mess it, but you put up on the screen already. So don't shrink yourself. Avoid shrinking yourself, and especially that message as a woman of color, and as a Black woman, to consistently have to shrink yourself or feel like you have to shrink yourself is a part of your daily existence. So positive risk taking, facing fears, becomes something like we talk about in our show. It becomes something that's not this undertaking where two dudes sit next to a table next to me and I'm a dude and I can talk to them as a man, but every single interaction, you have to filter it through, is this interaction with a guy? Right. And what does that mean? And the fear that naturally can and should, right, come with that is a part of facing the fear and the challenge of the fear that comes from, if I don't shrink myself in this masculine world, then what happens?
Yeah, that's it. It's super important that you touch on gender there. Because that's global, that's universal. Gender, I don't care what country you're in, it historically is a face your fear proposition when it comes to being a woman. As a father of a daughter, I have to be concerned about what her gender means for her safety. I got to be concerned about what her gender means for her professionally. And I've got to try to center the conversation in ways that's going to build her confidence and let her know that, mistakes will be made, and we go into coaching mode after that. So I've always got those concerns. Additionally, I wanted to just step back in 1 second, just to, on a lowbrow level, talk about facing your fear, because you guys are highly, highly educated. And I mean, you got way more student loans than I do.
Thank you. Just because, they like to pay engineers.
My point was,
Jeff, for the trigger warning, because I'm sure our audience is highly educated as well.
Yeah,
so
y'all highly educated.
You sitting there, and you done triggered her whole.
I'm gonna go lowbrow. We can all do this.
Triggering all the debt in the middle of a pandemic.
Man, you guys are so smart. I just need to come down. And talk at the low level, right?
Go ahead and go low. Go ahead.
The only way. Listen, I'm gonna talk about our mutual friend, Dr. Roddy Ferguson, right? 4-time national judo champion, Olympian in a combat sport, right? There's no way. There's so many nuggets that we've talked about over the years, but one thing he says about the day of the event, win or lose, I don't want to see you crying. The time to cry is not during the performance or after the performance of the event. The time to cry is every day at practice, right? You need to be practicing in such a way that you are beyond your comfort zone every day, so that once you get to that point where it's performance time, this is normal. My new comfort zone has encompassed this performance moment.
I'm imagining Roddy's voice saying this, and it comes out slightly different than how you.
Yeah, I'm trying to save everybody all that. You feel free to go listen to his show if you want to hear it in his voice, but I'm going to give you the message in my way.
Deliver the message. Deliver the message. Hey, he told me he's gonna put hands. He told me he's gonna put hands on me in our last podcast, so I'm gonna make fun of him. So
he said, this is putting hands on people,
but he'll do it.
That's been really hard in COVID. I feel bad. We can't be talking about him when he's not here. I guess we'll have to tag him.
Oh, we'll talk all about it, tag him and everything else.
The other piece is, if you've ever worked out, you've ever done any strength training, if you're really doing it and you really want results, you have to live after you establish consistency, because that's a hurdle. After you establish consistency, you have to live in a space beyond your comfort zone. And that can be a scary, scary place, right? If you put more weight than you've ever lifted before on your back and then bend your knees, it's a scary place. You just have to become a person who faces fear down. You don't have to take reasonable risk. You have to take precautions and things.
But feel like I need to stare at fear.
Yeah, you got to look at it. You got to look at it. You got to face it. And here's the other side. Here's the other side. I don't know your audience culturally, but my audience culturally, the show is called The Black Futurist. Okay, so here's the other side. Here's the converse on that. I know
really, really
if you're outside somewhere and you hear gunshots, we've all made fun of the people who, well, what's going on over there? We're all going that way. Maybe we should change this playbook and figure out, should we be taking our own advice and maybe walking towards the noise in regular life situations more so than we, get safe? I don't know.
There's something about we honor our first responders, right? Because we honor them in terms of people who run towards the danger, right? So there's a thing. That's a thing. Run towards the danger. Sometimes that makes sense. If it's random bullets flying, it don't. But again, let's challenge it. What if somebody needs your help, right? So
yeah, you're at your house and you hear a loud bang downstairs.
Oh, you can't be talking about houses and bangs right now.
Why?
Breonna Taylor.
Oh, I wasn't there. I just meant like vase fall down. You went hardcore. I meant vase fall down. Somebody left the window open maybe. But you have to go. You have to get up and you have to go. And it can be scary, right? It can be scary. So life is scary. We have to take reasonable precautions and we have to take risks. That's my take.
I agree with all of that. I mean, at the end of the day, that being comfortable feels comfortable. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, as Coach B said, is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But to get the big rewards whenever, especially as you start reading and listening, between listening to podcasts and reading books of highly successful people, the one thing you never hear in any of these books is
play it safe.
I played it safe, or I went to school, then I got a job, I worked that job forever. That's never the narrative. I've recently read Ken Honda's Happy Money, James Clear's Atomic Habits, Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning and Miracle Equation. And nothing you hear in any of this or any of these podcasts is, I've been chilling. Even the people on here from the Black Futurist podcast.
Ain't no book that's called The 7 Habits of Highly Mediocre People or The 7 Effective Habits of Average People, right? That doesn't exist. There's no market for that. We look for the extraordinary and we find the extraordinary aspirational. And I think to a large extent we should. We got to be, within reason. And so because the extraordinary is aspirational, we end up often missing the fact that all of us, for the most part, most of us are overwhelmingly average, but then we do some dope stuff every once in a while. And maybe we were inspired by a podcast, by a book we read, by, like you said, right? But other than that, we're usually just kind of going about our day, right? We're not superheroes. We don't get the opportunity to be superheroes, but we can engage in some acts of heroism if we're going to face down our fears. I think about it from an educator's standpoint as a otherwise obscure Russian psychologist named Lev Vygotsky. The important thing he created this concept in learning called this zone of proximal development. What does that mean? It says basically the best learning, the most effective learning occurs in this kind of mental space between something that is rote that you can do, that backward and forward, and you can do it in your sleep, and something that you cannot do unless you have the imminent direct help of a more knowledgeable other, right? And to live. So as an educator, I challenge my pre-service teachers that I'm working with. I challenge my students to say, you have to make your students live in this area of discomfort called this zone of proximal development. You're not quite sure. You can't do it yourself. You need some help, but it's not going to defeat you. It's not overwhelming, but it's not easy that you can do it yourself, right? And that's a state of constant, back to your word, be discomfort. It's a state of constant emotional discomfort, but it's a positive risk.
Right.
Because at the end is more knowledge, right? Of wisdom.
Right. And I just touch on this one last time. I don't advocate being irresponsible. I'm not talking about irresponsible risk.
Positive risk.
I'm talking about taking positive risk. You know, so if you want to start a new business, I'm not saying quit your job and, you know, burn your savings up. I'm saying you need to keep the job and do that business from the time you get home until the time you need to go to sleep. So, you know, you may be risking some of your savings, but you're still taking responsible risk. But both of those things are necessary.
The hustle struggle is real.
No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go on to the next one. The other thing that is huge when it comes to living your purpose is you have to take action. That literally, that's the secret sauce in almost any motivational conversation or any self-help book. There's always some piece of action. They even talk about how the law of attraction only has so much power if you just think happy thoughts, but you literally don't do anything. Like, and there's that saying that a goal without a plan is a dream. So I think it's really important to add that piece that not only do you need the self-awareness, be willing to take the risk of facing your fear, but you have to also be willing to take action, because that action is going to help. Number one, living in your purpose is not passive, because you're living in it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be some level of action, but nothing happens without action. You can't get to greatness without action. You just can't get anywhere without taking that next step of action. And in this episode, you also see her willing to take that action, that as she starts building her confidence, as Hippolyta starts, you know, kind of start feeling herself, that she starts taking action. She's not sitting at home in the room crying about her husband, George, who's kicked it. She decided, they're not giving me the answers I want. I'm gonna ride out, you know, and due to the time period this is, you have to know she's well aware of the fact that this is not the safest place to be road tripping as a Black woman by yourself.
Right.
That she decides.
When the car came back last time, it had no back window and bullet holes in it. So yeah.
Right. So she decides she's gonna take action. She wants answers. She's gonna go out and get them. And as the mystery unfolds, she takes another action. Is like, well, I'm gonna figure this out too. And then when it gets hella scary and it's just kind of a little nuts, she keeps going. Yeah. You know, and I think there's something to be said for being willing to take action, because there are so many things that are easy. It's easy to keep doing what's comfortable. It's easy to keep doing what you've always done. It's easy to do the minimal amount of effort. Yeah. But when it comes to stepping into something greater, you have to be willing to take the action. And I feel like Mo wants to say something.
That I was just gonna say that it reminds me of the Yogi Berra quote, and it said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. You know, you know, what do you do if you see a red button? Push it, right? Like, do something. And it's simple and it's simplistic, but it's not always easy, taking it to the context that you're bringing us through, Doc. Like, so in the context of facing your fears, in the context of, you know, being pushed to shrink yourself, right? In the context where Hippolyta's inaction meant, while George is out green booking it, she's at home taking care of her baby, right? And that's not where she belongs in her spirit. So she's got to take some action, and she does, right? Like, even when Atticus, this is not a spoiler. Look, here's a spoiler. Atticus wants to borrow the car, and she says no. If that ruins the episode for you, look, email me at brendan@gmail. So, but you know, if you take that and you take that action, like she's gone from a point where it was no, you're not allowed, to no, I'm taking the car, and I don't care what sort of crisis you're in, man, you can beat it. right? I have to do this. I am taking this action. I'm not taking anybody with me. So thus that begins her hero's journey. The first thing she's got to do is take a drastic action. She has to turn down this dude in this precedent setting, paradigm where the dudes get the car when they need it. She's like, nah, we're going to start out and there will be no dudes in this journey.
It's important. Also important is that her engagement in her own story had a lot of dialogue between her and other women. You know, it wasn't one of those male-dominated mansplaining shows.
Bechdel test. Passes the Bechdel test.
There you go.
Anybody doesn't know what's the Bechdel test? It's and I mix it up sometimes. Alison Bechdel, woman 1980s, came up with this test for like movies. And it's I think it's like three things. It's like are there female characters in the movie? Do the female characters speak to each other? And do they speak to each other about anything other than a dude? And the number of movies that and books and that fail that test, right? Some of them, of course, like you can figure, but others, the number of movies that fail that test is disturbing, right? And it's not some hard sort of ironclad rule. It's just a kind of rule of thumb to look at. But yeah, it starts to stand out to you once you see that. When you watch a movie, it's like, man, these women haven't talked about anything other than men. Or I haven't seen a woman carry out a conversation with another woman.
Or another woman with a name.
Right.
Cafe worker number 3.
Right. She's like, I'd like to order a number 3. And that's the extent of the dialogue between women in your movie, right? Like, you're probably not honoring any sort of agency amongst women, which is the last point I was going to make, is that there's a lot of agency around Lovecraft country that has to do with women and Black women. It behooves us to shout out Misha Green, who's the showrunner, who is just crushing it. And the things that she has brought to us vis-a-vis Lovecraft country about the agency of women and agency of women of color, agency of Black women, and women of color too, later on in episodes as well. So
yeah, I actually appreciate the idea that we haven't really spoiled this episode.
We've done a good job.
We kind of like probably lost some people in the beginning, like, oh, they're gonna do spoilers, and we didn't.
Nah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Because our show, we're gonna tell you everything.
See, I got skills.
You shouldn't probably have said spoilers, because we with alacrity have tap danced around this line and not spoiled anything except for that Tick borrows the car. He tries to, and he can't.
Well, and I think one of the beautiful things about seeing these relationships with women is one of the things I think that's missed for a lot of women, and that is something I cherish very much since I went to Spelman College, which, if you're on here and you're not familiar with Spelman College, it's one of 2 historically Black women's colleges, is the type of relationships you can have in a nurturing environment with women. Because just as there may be conversations that men have amongst each other that I'm not going to fully understand everything because I'm not a dude. That there are
Shout out to the barbershop.
Men aren't going to fully understand about women, just as we'll say that there are spaces where there are conversations or things that are automatically understood because we're Black that people that are non-Black might not understand. And there's something beautiful of the way they have these conversations, and it's almost like peer nurturance, that people are able to nurture each other and each other's growth. And there's something special when you have positive relationships with women that happens to the confidence of women. And I think something that's kind of a side effect of living in your purpose that you also see in this episode is you see someone go from a point of their life's not bad, they're doing more than existing, but they're not necessarily thriving. And seeing all of these women pour into her. Because you pretty much are seeing either women pour into her or women challenge her. And by the challenge and the pouring in, it helps her actually grow. And that growth is facilitated by this push, pull, pour, pull struggle situation that helps her actually grow. That's one of the beautiful things about going to a women's college, and that if you extrapolate it out further, that a lot of Black people feel about going to an historically Black college where your people are pouring into you and nurturing you, but also challenging you to be more than, as the young people would say, basic.
Where are you finding that energy now post college in your professional life? What spaces are you finding that allow you, and let's say pre-COVID, right? Where are you replicating that in your life now?
Well, part of it is I have a very close group of friends, and we're all female. So we have that kind of woman energy. Naturally, also having gone to Spelman, we do have, I feel like I'm 2 steps away from a teenager because I was supposed to have my 25th college reunion during COVID. Also, the coaching program I did, we missed graduation. So I keep missing stuff. But it's those spaces. And I'm also in a sorority. There are a lot of women's organizations. And then you end up having just side conversations with your friends or your peers. And given a lot of what the context is of what's going on in the society itself, it's splintered off into a lot of these different diversity conversations that are happening in workspaces, places you might be speaking, and other things, especially because there's been such a light shown on between the after effects of COVID when it comes to education, and the fact that a lot of child rearing, handling virtual school, handling household stuff has fallen upon a lot of women, that there have been a lot of woman-centric conversations because so much of these traditional gender roles has become almost unmanageable with the shifts of the tasks that have happened due to COVID.
Yeah. I want to actually challenge you both to recreating that environment. We can't go back in time. Hippolyta may be able to, if she even went back in time. I'm going to argue against that on the Black Futurist, not here because I'm not going to spoil too much. But I was on another platform, and I was in a conversation, and it landed on college experiences. And the guy who came up was talking about how in Black communities, he who did not go to a historically Black college felt like there was sometimes a barrier placed between he and those who have attended historically Black colleges. And I had to not argue back. I had to listen and understand his experience. I disagree, but I don't have his experience, right? I went to an historically Black college, and then I went to a PWI. But let's assume he's right. And in his experience, he finds that, there's this barrier that those who have attended historically Black colleges, maintain between, like us and them, the belly stars and the non-belly stars for you Dr. Seuss fans. And I think that we need to challenge ourselves to recreate those environments, create spaces where people can experience that same level of love, nurturing, and acceptance in our communities. And Mo, I'm sure you're doing it through your wrestling teams. Erica, I'm sure you're doing it through your coaching. And I think we can do more. I just want to make sure that we, kind of plant that seed and put a pin in that.
Sure. Yeah, that's
big, unique experiences. I think that the tricky thing and the thing I like to tell people is, number one, there's not enough room for everybody to be at a HBCU. The next is, an HBCU honestly isn't for everybody. It's not going to be everybody's best jam.
Yep.
And a lot of people I know, like the group of people I talk about a lot of times, there are 4 of us that get together every Saturday. Well, now we have a 5th because my friend's cousin has hopped in. But 3 of us went to HBCUs, 2 did not. But I think what ends up happening is sometimes there's a culture of an openness that's just a little bit different sometimes when you've gone to one, but also you realize you didn't even do it on purpose. I realize a lot of my friends, a lot of us that went to HBCUs, why is he pointing at as stormtroopers? I see the Bison hat. I see it. What else are you pointing at?
Nothing. Continue.
Okay. That you do find yourself, I do probably have a disproportionate amount of Black friends. And part of it probably was because of the way we interacted at an HBCU. So it's like, unless I work with people, that's just who I happen to have been around more, even though I do have some relationships with people that are non-Black.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too, having gone to an HBCU, and for those people who are listening to your podcast, who have watched all the shows all the way up through the episode with Hippolyta that focuses on her, the episode, a prior episode that focuses on Ruby. And again, I think I can speak around without spoilers.
If you say I did put in the description, disclaimer, they may be spoilers.
Right. There is this notion of taking action and initiating a hero's journey, a birth and a rebirth, and the ultimate version of empathizing, understanding, walking in someone else's shoes. And it speaks to bit of a tangent. It speaks to what I notice as a difference in terms of what a hero's journey looks like when it's feminized, right? In Hippolyta's journey, there are no women who are antagonistic. In the entire episode, there are no women who are antagonistic to her. It's only men who are antagonistic to her, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a subtle way, I hope, a nod. I read it that way, as a nod, like, yeah, to a large extent, some of the biggest problems that we face are not due to men. And I want to pathologize men. I'm a dude, and I think dudes in general okay. Okay, right? like the old comedian, like Tony the Tiger, like, they're great. And then you got like Oscar the Ocelot, he's sitting there eating like, they all right. Every comedian has done that, right? Right. And I think in general, dudes are right. And at the same time, masculinity and maleness as an oppressive factor privileges dudes and causes dudes and masculine things to be the largest roadblocks and hindrances for women, and for women of color in particular. Just like I said, just a bit of a tangent point. I'm just circling it back.
I'm not going to pick that up too much, because we could do a whole, I could have y'all back and we could do a whole conversation on that.
Okay, let's go. But I do want to get to this honorable mention, because I got some stuff there.
Okay. The next bonus was the fact that it's going to be very important when you're looking at your purpose, is you have to define yourself and define your purpose for yourself. That your journey, your purpose, what you were created for is not going to be the same as every single other person. And it's very easy to listen to the noise of people telling you who you are, what you should be doing. So I wanted to put as a bonus, because it was so funny. Coach B originally was like, you can't narrow it down to 3. I was like, but I got bonuses. And this was originally going to be like 15 minutes. So, but we're doing quality time. Hope you are enjoying all of the quality time. I feel like you're just getting to see us hang out.
Yeah.
But the importance of defining yourself, and the thing that's hard though, is if you don't have the self-awareness, you can't define yourself, because you don't know yourself, which I believe Mo mentioned earlier. It's very important that you have to be aware enough to know yourself to then be able to define it and to get on that journey and to embrace your purpose and to live in it. Because one of the beautiful things about living in your purpose is the amount of abundance that flows from being in your purpose, because it puts you in alignment with the world and the universe by being in your purpose. And you'll also feel more fulfilled, because one of the things you'll talk to a lot of people is there are people that they've done really great things. They've made money. They've done films, they've done music, they have built businesses, they've invented stuff. But if it wasn't something that felt like it was in their purpose, you'll talk to these people that have just done all these things. And then you find out that they're like, well, I felt like I didn't do anything. I didn't feel like it meant what it was supposed to mean, or it felt empty. So then I had to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a defining yourself piece that speaks to, Dr. Erica, what you were talking about in terms of going to HBCUs and those of us who have gone to HBCUs, I noticed that in oftentimes, so I've HBCU, PWI, both in my education, and we move differently in white spaces. Some of the things that a lot of us were told when we wanted to go. So I know how old B and I are, 80s and 90s, 80s, when we were kids, and people would say to you, well, if you want to go to an HBCU, you ain't gonna learn about the world because the world is white. All of that being wrong, right? All of that being, patently wrong on all different levels. But it did bring up the question of whether or not you are going to be fully prepared for your professional life in particular. That is more than likely, if you go on to a business world, anything that, semi-corporate or whatever, the work world, that's a white world in the United States. And to circle back a bit to the episode with Ruby as well, and that's another one that about moving in white spaces. Again, I won't, no spoilers. That really speaks to that in a lot of ways, and how we might choose to move in those spaces because of our identities, and how we do define ourselves. In Lovecraft, literally, how Hippolyta, Hippolyta, is affirming of herself, right? Mm-hmm. So she goes through this hero's journey, and her hero's journey ultimately is about defining herself. In a lot of ways, for men and masculine hero journeys, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? There's some sort of treasure at the end. It tends not to be as introspective, I think, in general, the masculinized hero's journey. It's like, nah, man, I came home with Medusa's head, and then I turned that gigantic Gorgon into a big cinder block in the ocean. That's how I go, right? And that's totally different from I am Hippolyta, right? That's a totally different concept. And I, again, just as a shout out to Lovecraft, and that challenges me to think about things in those ways, what it means to define yourself, what it means to define yourself as a Black woman.
Yeah. If I can touch on it just for a second, I know I don't know what time
we can do whenever.
Okay.
Careful.
When we're setting goals, and I've had the benefit of having great mentors that are still my mentors. At an early professional stage, there was a time when I clearly remember sitting down with one of my mentors, and he asked me the things that I wanted to have. What did I want to have by a certain time? What did I want to have by a certain time? What condition did I want to create by a certain time? Where did I want to live? All these things. And it was fantastic. And as our conversations over the decades have evolved, I see over and over again how we've regressed from what do I want to have? And this is positive regression. To what do I need to do to have those things? And the most important foundational thing is, who do I need to be in order to be the person who can do those things and have those things? And so we went from working on, the very superficial, what did you want to have, to what did you have to do, to who did you have to be? And that takes us back to even the title of this episode, which was I Am. Mm-hmm. And we talk about defining yourself. In this episode, it was actually naming herself, which is the same context here. And she's being worked on. She's being given the opportunity to work on herself, and being worked on by the great I Am. The great I Am is saying, you go and work on yourself and do it. Become who you need to become, so that now I can integrate you into, you are also now the I Am. And without any spoilers, because I kind of grazed it a little bit there. Hippolyta, that is part of her hero's journey, is to experience that, and on the everyday person level, I would just write that down somewhere. The three kind of words: be, do, and have. And you can kind of reverse engineer that, but just understand that the foundational work that we're doing is always about I am. It's who do I need to be?
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is when you bring that back to, I feel like we've had so many conversations. It's like, I feel like I brought the Black futures literally over here. over here. Is that when you look at one of the beauties of HBCUs and some of the beauties of, you know, these nurturing women relationships, is that part of what society does that is the disservice to a lot of us, especially people of color, is the way it defines you. Not only is it not you, but it's whack. That it's,
yeah.
You know, it's like, I can't count how many people had this narrative that they wanted to be a doctor, and people kept telling them, even at school, teachers, counselors, that you're not going to be a doctor, or you shouldn't go to college, you should become a plumber or a janitor, or you're not smart enough to do this, or you're not bright enough, or you're not tall enough. And that's the beauty, I think, when you think of the legacy of historically Black colleges, and one of the ways that it helps you move into the world when they say you know, you're not going to be prepared because the world's white, this isn't, is that number one, it gives you the space to learn yourself and to develop, but it also gives you the space and teaches almost anyone that goes there how to be confident. And the thing I think people don't talk about as much is when you get this confidence, it gives you a shield for when you go into the other environment. Because I did the same. I did Black, then white, then Black, then white. And it's like they built me up everywhere Black, they tore me down everywhere I went. That was the PWI. Mm. But the way I could survive the PWI is because I went to the HBCU before it.
Yeah, you became who you needed to be in order to, you know, last in those other environments. By the way, I never removed the bass from my voice, ever. Never. Right? Yeah. Never.
How did we even get here?
And I don't have any codes to switch, right? Who you see is who you're going to get, because I am who I need to be.
Yeah.
And he also has been an entrepreneur forever.
For a very long time.
That's it. Yeah, you have to define yourself to be an entrepreneur. You got to define yourself. You got to go on the hero's journey. You got to take positive risks. You have to expose yourself emotionally, physically, monetarily, politically. So like, and it takes all of those things. And in the end, you come up with, if it has been introspective, similar to Hippolyta's jersey, in the end, you come up with your entrepreneurial output that faces people. And you also end up defining yourself. You end up with like, yeah, you know what? So no, like when I'm talking to people, if the way that I'm talking right now is the exact same way that I'm talking to whatever client or person that like, this is it. This is how I talk. I'm not, you know, if I'm breaking verbs or whatever.
Like I got to do a church finger. I have a work voice.
And look,
it is not this voice.
Because that's not if I'm not mistaken, you're not in an entrepreneurial position, right?
I am. I have.
Or are you? Okay.
I have. There's Erica. There's Dr. Erica, and then there's Dr. Goodwin.
Okay.
It's that same voice. You have to phone like, hello, this is Dr. Goodwin. How may I help you?
Yeah.
It's professional. You're just professional. I get it.
But it's
not like the weatherman on the Chappelle show. It's not that.
Right. Yeah. That's different.
No, it's not that, but I have code switched at work before.
Sure. And I have no question.
I do, especially when I'm working in and Mo doesn't know all there is to know about Dr. Erica. Is I also am a traveling psychiatrist. So sometimes I work in different environments with different people. And sometimes to have a conversation that people will take in, you have to switch to a different language that, you know, there are times where it's like, how mom and them. That's the only thing they're going to hear is you ask them about mom and them or something else. But I do think it is powerful to be able to feel, this is almost like, it's not a pun, but it's powerful to be empowered enough to actually be yourself.
That's what I'm saying. Does it feel when you code switch? So let me couch the code switching for me in terms of, it feels like I am not being true to the kid from Ypsilanti when I code switch. Does it feel diminishing or do you feel differently?
I feel like for me, it doesn't, but there are specific reasons why.
Right.
because when I code switch, it is generally to either connect with a patient or for dramatic effect in a meeting. So it's not code switching in and out to please people, because luckily B has a couple years on me, but I'm in the same vicinity. Is that beautiful thing that happens in your 40s where you have enough wisdom that you are a giver of no blanks. And generally in a lot of my workspaces, I'm similar. So I think there's something about the wisdom of not feeling. I purposely have switched my career so that I'm always in a position where people need me more than I need them, so I can leave at any moment, which gives a lot more latitude than when you're boxed in and you need people. Like, you need that job. Not a job, you need that job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Not to beat up code switching either, because it also is a survival tool, right? Depending on where you are in your career journey, you may need that tool to survive, to get to a place where that's no longer a necessary tool.
Yeah, I'm thinking code switching in terms of I'm diminishing my blackness in order to fit in. Dr. Eric, what I hear you doing is being culturally responsive, and that's totally different. That's completely different from.
I can be culturally responsive as a senior psychiatrist.
Exactly.
As a med student.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, and I think that's the struggle a lot of people are dealing with. And the positive thing about there being so much of a light shown on the level of disrespect and lack of caring for Black lives is that it's causing people that are non-Black to wake up to the fact that for a lot of people, our lives have absolutely no value. A speck of dust on a floor might have more value than some of our lives. So it's opening up the space to start having conversations of all the things people are doing to move in these spaces.
Yeah, a speck of dust or drywall, as we found out with Breonna Taylor.
Yes. So I think really it's a perfect storm of things that I think is starting to have more conversations, and people are waking up to the fact that a lot of what has been the reality of living Black in America that people had thought was either making it up or making it a lot more than it is, or basically being paranoid, or as they used to say, playing the Black card, that honestly, that this is reality. I was actually having a conversation with someone about a talk I'm giving, and they were talking about kind of the existential things going on with what is going on racially. And I had to stop them and say, it's not existential. These fears aren't existential. These fears are based in reality. They are real fears. They are real concerns. They're existential for white people, but it's not existential for a lot of us.
Yep.
I got B on here. Now we are going sideways, crossways, around the ways.
Hey, this is your show. I'm happy to be here. It's good to be here.
Coming to America. I'm very happy to be here.
Right. I'm very happy to be here. Right. What I know that you have a cadence that you normally conduct with your show. And I'm happy to comply with it.
Oh, no worries. Sometimes you have to be spontaneous, have fun, let go, and do things a different way.
Right. I do have a question. Now, you went to the next bonus, and I thought this was the first bonus. I think that we probably all have an understanding and agreement on the basis of don't shrink yourself for others. And I want to, instead of, spending too much time in how much we agree on that, I want to challenge this notion for a second, because there is a moment in the show where Hippolyta is talking to George. Spoiler, sorry. And she says, I've shrunk myself to accommodate you, to accommodate kids, to accommodate life, and and I have a problem with that now. And I want to ask you guys and prompt you guys to talk about whose responsibility is that?
Well, when you think about what she She said, I shrunk myself long before I met you, and then you helped shrink me some more. So I think it speaks to a lot of the narrative for a lot of women, and you can extrapolate it out, especially to Black people, is that by nature to fit in these spaces and to fit these roles, there's not space for the magnificence of most people. There's just not room for it. There's not. So what ends up happening is to fit. It's like, I'm trying to think of like. For some reason, I'm thinking of Jell-O, but I can't make Jell-O work with this analogy that's working in my head. Mo, you're getting to see my mind does weird things too.
I was supposed to say 20 seconds ago, I am the magnificent. Only because you said it, and I'm sorry. You have Black Futures written across, so I have to be true to the brand.
No worries. No worries. That's why, it's like a crossover. So you get your name goes across the bottom. Folks know who you are. But I think the thing is it's this conformity. And the complicated thing is that no group of people are a monolith. So all women aren't the same, all Black women aren't the same, all Black people aren't the same, just like all Asian people aren't the same. These people are not all the same. And what ends up happening is the societal or stereotypical roles, there's a very narrow space. It's kind of, if you look at music, how if you say there's pop music, there's rap music, there's classical music, and then there's gospel and maybe some R&B and country. And there are a lot of people that don't fit those boxes, and there's not space. So I think a lot of the reason
Little
why
Nas
people are feeling like pardon me?
Little Nas X.
Yes. So I think a lot of the reason that people feel like they shrink themselves is, number one, there's not the space for people to be themselves because they can't be themselves and then fit these roles.
Yeah. And when we're talking about the workplace and code switching and that kind of thing and workplace type environments, the whole American paradigm has been the workplace is where your creativity, your passion, your sense of who you are, exactly your character goes to die. It is apolitical. It's a social. Your job is to come there, drink your little cup of coffee, go to your cubicle, go home. You are the paradigm that we have in our head is you are not allowed to be any piece of who you are outside of work when you are at work. So it's that paradigm to me is the ultimate in shrinking yourself, because it says the workplace is not for you. The workplace is for workers. You need to leave. You need to strip every single bit of who you are and leave it out. That's why we end up in everything becomes a political discussion outside of work, because those same people that you spend 8 hours a day, you don't ever get to know anything really about them, because your paradigm is, yeah, we don't talk politics at work. We don't talk about this at work. We keep things superficial. You retire 30 years later, they give you a watch, and you sat next to this person 30 years and you don't know, you have no clue who they are for real, right? Never broke bread in their home. You have no idea, who they voted for in the last election, and you can't. It's taboo if you actually bring it up. So you add that, the idea of professionalism in the United States is that professional means personality less, right? Unless your personality fits into this very rigid, narrow definition of what is professional. No other part of your person, like voice inflection. You got to be careful about how you use voice. Howard, this is how we gone tangent, talking about how my mind works, Dr. E. We've talked about that, I think, on a podcast. Howard Dean was eliminated from the presidential from the presidential nomination process in Democratic Party because he went, yeah.
No,
that eliminated him.
There's more of a
well, that's what Daisha. Yeah, that's what he did, and that eliminated him from contention for the presidency of the United States.
Not because he was going to chop that MF desk in half.
We're going to go to the law, and I'm going to go to the Oval Office, and I'll chop that desk in half. You brought the wrong people on your show, Doctor. So yeah, the fact that
this to be, and I'll be like, edit it in the clips.
There you go. That's it. We're gonna make your hand get tired on the edit button if you don't if you don't want it. But yeah, that's the notion, right? That you have to be someone who is completely different to be, in this case, the ultimate professional, which is the white man who's going to be the president of the United States, right? So you can't say, and along comes Donald Trump. Because he has chopped that desk in half. So
even think.
Right. So he challenges those notions of professional and code switching in ways that are actually useful. Donald Trump does. But we see how he runs roughshod over decorum. So there's professionalism and then there's decorum.
And you would be mentioning this on debate night, right?
Oh man.
Right.
Yeah, for if you keep time of your podcast, yeah, that's getting ready to come on here in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I think this is huge. I mean, I think this is where the meat is, and all the other things kind of blend into it. But I think especially when you look at this episode and just expand it out for women and Black women, is that there's this narrow view of what we are supposed to be and what we can do. And that view is that you're a good girl, which means you're not a sexual being. Honestly, we're not encouraged to have really.
I like to encourage you to be as sexual as you want to be. Long time ago, when I was single. Yeah. Continue.
But
it's a great workout.
That you are sexual beings. You're taught that you're supposed to go to school and hopefully get your little husband, get your kids, and then take care of everybody. And there's just not room for this true, what a lot of people realize is womanhood later. I mean, especially if you even look back previously, there were certain career fields we were actually, you're going to be a teacher, there was
nurse, etc. Yeah.
Really narrow space. So when you come up to this idea of shrinking yourself, it's that there wasn't room for anyone to be a unique human being and to embrace all it means to not only be human, but to actually be a woman, that there just wasn't space for it. There was literally no space. And I think this episode with Hippolyta shows just what happens when someone can't breathe. It's just a matter, do people get to that point where they can actually articulate the fact that they're suffocating? And I think that's one of the things you're seeing just in droves in COVID, because people were already kind of suffocating. But then you put, I want you to work, make some money, be a teacher, be the lunch lady, manage this home, do all this stuff, that people are realizing that this is a load of crap. This is a total load of crap. So, I think it's just a great point to make, that there just hasn't been space, so people shrink to survive. What you got, B?
No, I'm with it all the way. I think there's a lot in this episode. I wouldn't watch this episode as a standalone. If you are not a watcher of Lovecraft Country, I would enjoy it all. I can't even fathom the idea, Eric, that you watched 6 episodes straight and then the 7th, like in a binge fashion, because I've had to watch each one at least twice in order to really kind of get it. And there's a lot of meat that I want to get into about this episode, and I'd love to invite you to come on to our show when we really dig into those spoilers, because you're doing a lot of good for folks and helping people to self-assess, self-identify, and really a lot of self-help stuff. Our show has nothing to do with self-help sometimes we're just having a lot of fun about topics that kind of border on our mutual area of interest. So when we get into this episode on our show, spoilers abound.
Well, I want, maybe you'll invite me to come on now that I watch the show.
Oh, let's go. You're welcome. I'd love to have you on the episode 7 show. That'd be great.
I would love
Right.
So go ahead, Mo.
I was gonna say, I just said dope. Done.
Thank you. So as we start wrapping up, I want to ask you all if you have any final words.
I'll go first because I'm gonna be quick. Thanks for having us. This was dope. We, two dudes, and we've known each other forever. So it's important that we have a woman's energy whenever we're talking, or go to a place that a woman's energy is, that's the place that we're coming into, right? With our little masculine energy. So that's been fun. You gave me a lot to think about, and the points that you made are so important, and they really factor in self-help. I feel inspired, just in particular about about that, not shrinking yourself and taking risk. That's a message that I can take right now, even as somebody participating in the show. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Mo. B?
That's fantastic. Yeah, I really find number one, your consistency and willingness to share to be super inspirational. I'm so happy that we had to talk earlier tonight that even prompted the idea that we could participate in your show tonight. I hope that some of your folks really take this to heart, replay it a couple times, ask questions, like be intrusive. Don't just be the fly on the wall listener. I would say interrupt Dr. Erica. Find her on social media, send her DMs to make her give you the answer to your free questions. Engage, take action. Don't shrink yourself when it comes to sending her a DM. Do it so that you can learn and you can engage. And I think you'll be happy with what you find. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, thank you so much. And as it's scrolling across the bottom, you can find them. It's the Black Futurist Podcast. It is phenomenal. I was actually on an episode a while ago about telemedicine, but they do really great stuff. So I do highly recommend people check it out. It's on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm everything Apple, so I find myself there. But they're literally everywhere. Just do your little Google.
Just like
type them in and make sure you subscribe and also leave comments because that will also help their ratings. And they're good people.
And like they say in Chappelle's show in the little bumper, better not bring your kids. We are for mature audiences. It is not gratuitous, but we do speak freely.
Perfect. And naturally, thank you all for coming. I had the best guest ever. Thank you all. I can't believe we put this together in a couple of minutes.
Stay ready.
I know. Stay ready. As
that's my plug.
We'll stay
Be
ready.
The plug.
We make it happen, and they're good people. I'm very blessed that I have a phenomenal tribe. And one thing you'll learn is if you keep quality people around you, they will bring more quality people into your life. It's just all of it just kind of attracts and becomes synergistic. So I want to encourage everyone to also keep stock, pay attention to who you are surrounding yourself with. So in wrapping up, again, I'm your host, Dr. Erica, double board certified psychiatrist and integrative lifestyle coach. I'm on a mission to help women feel seen, valued, and whole on their own terms, which we talked about some tonight. Yes. And one of the reasons this episode really resonated with me is it spoke to a lot of the things in my book, Fix Your Fairy Tale, A Woman's Guide to a Great Life, Love, and Legacy. So I would encourage you to check it out. It's a great read. And the other thing is if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed by everything that's going on, because there's just not even enough time to name every single thing going on right now. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't feel like yourself, you're feeling nervous, you feel like all you're going to do is bite people's heads off.